Shutting himself away from the world following a rejection, Shinichi Kanou is all around a pretty average guy. Except for one key thing, he's a massive otaku, addicted to all forms of entertainment from games to manga. Shinichi has unknowingly been training his whole life for a job he never would have imagined in his wildest dreams. He's going to spread his culture to a whole other world. Armed with a giant library's worth of knowledge on his hobbies, Shinichi gets recruited as an otaku expert by the Japanese government. His task? To go to a completely different world and teach this world his ways and live out his fantasies. All while forming a harem of girls in love with him, from a simple maid all the way to the empress of the foreign land herself. Shinichi Kanou is a typical teenage shut-in, an otaku who is obsessed with all things anime, manga, and gaming. He was once rejected by his childhood friend. This only made him fall further into the life of a shut-in with no social life. One day, he is called for a job interview at a company looking for someone with his level of knowledge on otaku culture. When Shinichi arrives at the interview, though, he is taken away to another location. Waking up in an unfamiliar bed, Shinichi tries to make sense of his surroundings. That is when he is greeted by a cute maid. Unable to understand her as she speaks a foreign language, the maid gives him a ring which magically allows him to understand her and she to understand him. Introducing herself as Mayasel, the maid tells Shinichi that he is her new master. Two emotions run through Shinichi at the moment: shock for what strange event is happening, and joy due to the presence of a beautiful young lady. Then another girl enters the room. Introducing herself as Minori Kaganuma, she explains Shinichi's current location, the Holy Erden Empire's capital in another world. Later, Shinichi has a meeting with Minori and a man named Matoba. Matoba explains to Shinichi how one day a strange portal appeared in Japan that allowed travel between Earth and this magical fantasy world. He tells him all about how this world is basically a much less advanced Earth, but with many additions. The main one being the existence of magic and other fantasy beings like elves, dwarves, and dragons. Matoba goes on to tell Shinichi that he has been hired as the general manager for a company known as Amutech. His main job is to bring over otaku culture, manga, anime, and games from Japan into Erden, and help the people here enjoy them to the fullest. At first, Shinichi refuses, but after realizing he really has no choice here, he accepts. And the paycheck doesn't really hurt either. Later in the day, as Shinichi talks to Mayasel, she accidentally reveals that she is a half-elf. Shocked by Shinichi's easy acceptance of her nature, Mayasel tells him that elves and most non-human races are treated very poorly in this world. Finding out she can't read or write, Shinichi decides to teach her some basic Japanese. He goes on to meet his other servant here, a lizard man named Brook. Being summoned by the Empress of Erden, Minori, Shinichi, and Matoba head to the royal palace the next day. Almost instantly, Shinichi offends the 16-year-old Empress, who punches him onto the ground. As the Empress calls for Shinichi to be punished, Matoba covers for him and gets her to forgive Shinichi. The Empress's royal knight Gallius raises concerns over the value of otaku culture, which causes Shinichi to make a passionate speech about how great it really is. His determination and spirit impress the Empress, and she gives her blessing for Amutech's plan to go forward. Shinichi goes on to spend his days teaching Mayasel Japanese culture and building an office for himself full of manga and anime. One day, Petralka arrives at his home. She demands that Shinichi read some manga to her and sends away everyone else. Mayasel is the only one to stay with them at Shinichi's request. As he reads manga to the two girls, Petralka is made jealous of his interaction with Mayasel. The next day, Shinichi goes into town with Brook and is surprised to see the poor treatment of non-humans like elves and lizard people. He learns that the only way for them to move up in life is by joining the army and becoming strong warriors. Later, Shinichi is reading manga to Petralka again when Mayasel interrupts them to bring in some tea. Angered by this, Petralka starts scolding her and goes to hit her, but is stopped by Shinichi. Remembering this is just how things work in this world, he tries his best to explain the values of his culture, such as equality. This causes Petralka to forgive Mayasel, but demands he begin teaching her Japanese as well. A month has passed, and Shinichi's plans have moved even further. Generators for electricity and a school for children of all races and backgrounds have almost been completed. As Petrolka arrives where Shinichi and Mayasel are watching the construction, the two girls compete over who is further in their learning of Japanese. As Minori shows up as well, Petrolka questions Shinichi's taste in women, calling him a true pervert. That evening, Petrolka and Shinichi are having a talk alone. She tells him he's the only person she's ever really enjoyed being around. His response, however, annoys her as he brings up Mayasel, causing her to storm out. The same night, Mayasel shows her progress in learning Japanese, surprising Shinichi with how far she's come. The next day, Shinichi, Minori, and Mayasel are at the newly built school checking it out when Petrolka shows up. She once again tries to compete with Mayasel, showing off her progress in Japanese to them. Shinichi defends Mayasel, saying she's usually busy taking care of him, but this just makes her madder than ever. Petrolka begins shouting at him and Mayasel, but is interrupted by a group of hooded people who take out her guards and take them all hostage. The group Bedona explain their purpose: to stop the foreign culture being brought to Erdent by the invaders. They hold Shinichi and his friends in a room while discussing their plans as they'd taken their communication rings away. Fortunately, Mayasel and Petrolka are able to translate, and the group form a plan to get out of the situation. Shinichi claims to need the bathroom and is taken out into the hallway. There, he creates a distraction that brings all the Bedana members to him. This gives the others enough time to break out of their binds and join him. Using her superior fighting skills, Minori quickly takes out all the kidnappers, and Mayasel finishes them off with her magic, which she learned from her time in the army. Unfortunately, one of them manages to make one final attack, throwing a knife straight at Petrolka, too fast for her to dodge. Hit. Mayasel jumps in front of her, taking the attack instead. Things take a turn for the better quite suddenly with a time skip. Mayasel has fully healed, with Petrolka providing the best care possible for her. As time goes on, Shinichi settles into his role as head teacher at the new school, teaching the kids all kinds of fascinating things. As the two head home after a day of teaching, an intruder is detected on the grounds of their mansion. Sneaking up to this person, they find a beast girl drawing a picture of their home. Capturing her, they find out her name is Elbia, and she claims to be a wandering artist. Believing she's actually a spy from the eastern kingdom of Harem, the Erdent soldiers take her with them for interrogation and eventually execution. Shinichi refuses to accept this, believing the girl doesn't deserve such treatment. He heads to the royal capital palace to ask Petrolka to have her released. After a long argument over whether or not Elbia should be freed despite being a spy, Shinichi eventually comes up with an idea that satisfies everyone. He can hire her as an artist to draw manga, and they can feed her false information that will make Bahylum predictable if she reports back to them. With no one able to reject this plan, Elbia is freed and jumps onto Shinichi in happiness. A relatively peaceful few days follow. Shinichi continues teaching at the school and spending time with Mayasel at home. He does notice, however, that Elbia has been acting rather strange lately, locking herself in her room and giving him strange looks. Also, Petrolka summons him to the palace to show him her tsundere impression. Don't ask, it just happens. That same night, while reading manga, Shinichi and Mayasel have a talk. He asks her if she would like to come with him when he returns to his own world one day, and is overjoyed when she happily agrees. Later, after everyone's gone to sleep, Shinichi is attacked by Elbia in his bed. Only that it isn't a violent attack, rather something a little lustful. The others arrive at his screams and learn that Elbia has been acting weird because of the full moon. As a werewolf, it makes her lose control to her instincts, and in this case, feel the need to mate with Shinichi. With the tensions between the students of different races being at an all-time high in Shinichi's school, a solution must be found. Taking inspiration from something he saw happen between Minori and Elbia, he suggests a sports competition to let them get all their negative feelings out in one go. The decided competition is a football match. The dwarves coached by Shinichi versus the elves coached by Minori. The match begins now. The dwarves completely dominate the first half of the game with their physical strength. The second half, though, is almost completely flipped when the rules are changed to allow magic. The elves come back stronger than ever with their elemental magics, and the match slowly breaks down into a full-blown battlefield. As the competing players fall one by one, Petrolka jumps in from where she was watching and, with Mayacel's help, scores one final goal for herself? She wasn't on a team, so the match ends up being a draw. But the sight of their empress celebrating her goal with a half-elf like Mayacel makes everyone very happy. Another day of challenges begins for the Amatec general manager. Shinichi argues with Matoba over a trip back to Japan so he can buy the proper anime and manga himself, since Matoba has been getting the wrong ones delivered. Matoba finally agrees to his request, and the otaku is given sleeping pills so he can be transported back to his room without revealing the portal's location. When Shinichi wakes up back at his home in Japan, though, he notices an extra bag with him. Opening it up, he finds Mayacel inside. She snuck into the bag to come to Japan with Shinichi. She had wanted to see his homeland and experience it herself. Deciding to give her a fun day to remember, he takes her to Akiba and spends the day showing her all sorts of things from manga and game stores to a maid cafe. Night comes and Mayacel reveals she didn't bring any clothes with her. This means Shinichi has to go to the store himself and buy some underwear for her. Arriving back at his apartment, Shinichi finds Mayacel asleep and tucks her in. The next morning, they return to Erdent only for Shinichi to realize something terrible. He forgot to buy the things he went home for in the first place. Petrolka is sick of work. Exhausted by all the work she constantly has to do as Empress, Petrolka locks herself in her room as a shut-in. Shinichi, as a former shut-in himself, is brought in to deal with this matter at the request of Gallius. Asking them to trust him and not interrupt no matter what, he enters Petrolka's room and begins teaching her how to be an even bigger shut-in. As the day goes on and he teaches the young Empress more and more about the ways of the shut-in, Petrolka begins questioning if she's a bad ruler for abandoning her work. She is disappointed in herself for making all the people who care about her worry so much, and for running away from her problems instead of facing them. With Shinichi's words and actions helping her come to a decision, Petrolka fixes herself up and leaves her room the next morning. Greeted by Gallius and Petrolka's advisor, who have been waiting in concern for her health, she returns to her duties as Erdent's Empress. Gallius is at Shinichi's place to thank him for helping Petrolka in her shut-in phase. As he offers a reward for his help, Shinichi remembers that Minori is going to be using her vacation days soon, and asks for a spot to go for those. Gallius offers the Imperial Villa with the Empress's permission, and the Amatec group head out for the famous beach event. Shinichi is living his dream surrounded by beauties in swimsuits. Boy is having the time of his life when a student from his school arrives on their beach and tells them about strange monsters that attacked him and a friend in the nearby forest. The group head in to face them after a speech from Shinichi. After a tough chase and a short battle, they manage to capture all three monsters. What they find, though, are just members of the Japanese Defense Force who were there as security for the group. A completely new disaster has occurred. Video footage of the football match between the elves and dwarves from a while back has been leaked online in Japan. To stop the people back home from realizing the truth about this other world, Shinichi comes up with an idea to create a full movie here and claim that football match was just part of a scene with lots of special effects. With Petrolka's blessing, Shinichi and his friends go on to work on creating a movie. With the help of the students from the school as a project for them, they get scripts and costumes prepared. After filming many scenes starring Shinichi, Mayacel, Elbia, Petrolka, and even Gallius, they're ready for the final scene, a fight with a dragon. Unfortunately for the film crew, right as they begin shooting this scene, a real dragon shows up. Destroying their prop dragon, it moves on to attack them. Luckily, the Japanese forces are nearby and quickly fight off the dragon using tanks and other heavy weaponry. As the sun sets on a hill, Petrolka thanks Shinichi for giving her another unique experience and gives him a kiss on the cheek as a reward. With the introduction of otaku culture into Erdent's own culture being a huge success, there's one problem that's shown itself. The people have become too addicted to it, being unable to complete normal daily tasks because of not getting enough manga and anime. Shinichi goes to request more of the stuff from Matoba, but upon asking for his help, the man reveals something horrifying to Shinichi. This was the Japanese government's plan all along. By making the people of Erdent desperate for more otaku entertainment, they can now demand whatever they want from the Empire, and even slowly bring them under their own rule. Even Shinichi himself was just a tool to them, picked despite being a shut-in just so they could easily get rid of him if he tried to reveal this secret. Shinichi is disgusted by the part he has played in making this happen and returns home full of guilt and fear. That night, though, he has a heart-to-heart with Mayasel, who has been worried about his depressed attitude. His determination burning brighter thanks to the girl's words, Shinichi arrives at the royal palace the next day. Here, in front of the Empress and all her closest soldiers, he announces his plan to save Erdent. They will begin making their own manga and anime. Shinichi has begun his plan for Erdent's sake. The Japanese government, not liking his actions, send a team to assassinate him that very night. These agents, however, are swiftly captured in a trap Shinichi had set for them, already predicting something like this would happen. The next morning, Matoba arrives at the royal castle, apologizing for the incident. He claims the attackers were acting of their own and will be punished by the government for their actions. As he leaves, Shinichi discusses the chances of another attack with Petrolka and Galeus. Following this, many days pass in peace, absolutely nothing of the sort happening. One day, several attacks happen all at once on different parts of the capital. One such attack is at the school, causing Shinichi to race off towards it to save a limited edition manga issue. He arrives at the school, heading upstairs and finding the manga. As soon as he steps into the room, though, he's by Japanese soldiers and left in the burning building to die. Mayasel, Brook, and Elbia had followed after him. Rushing into the building, Elbia works on beating the soldiers while Mayasel finds Shinichi trying to wake him up. Eventually, just as all hope seems lost, Minori appears. Taking her friend's side, she helps Elbia with the soldiers, and they all escape the building together. Outside the school, Matoba appears. He tells them Japan will surely break all ties with Erdent now. Shinichi has other ideas, though, demanding to speak to his superiors. The next day, Matoba sets up a video call between his superior and Shinichi. Shinichi tricks the man speaking to him into confessing to all his plans involving his assassination, and reveals Petrolka was listening in this whole time. The Empress offers a deal. All of the attacks yesterday will be blamed on Bahilam, and the agreement between Japan and Erdent will continue as before. Shinichi just has to be left alone and allowed to continue as Amatek's manager. With the deal accepted, Shinichi is able to once again return to his passion, spreading otaku culture in this new world and enjoying his life to the fullest. The end. Check out this next anime recap on screen here.